We begin with the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the government and M23 rebels have signed a declaration of principles to end fighting in the east. Representatives of both sides signed the declaration in Doha, the capital of Qatar, which has been mediating talks. An official familiar with the discussions said it was reached after face-to-face meetings as well as Qatari shuttle diplomacy and includes an immediate ceasefire. It also outlines a commitment to begin formal negotiations on a comprehensive peace agreement in the near future. The officials said there was no consensus on a mechanism for a permanent ceasefire and a roadmap for restoring state authority in eastern DRC once a peace agreement is signed. An M23 source said the document does not mention any type of troop withdrawal. Right, let's get more on that story this hour. Our reporter Chris Ochamringa is in Kinshasa and joins us live this hour. Chris, thank you for joining us on Africa Live. The government and M23 rebels, we're hearing, have signed a declaration of principles to effectively end fighting in the east there. This is, of course, a positive sign of progress in finding peace. What has been the reaction in the DRC to that?
Well, first of all, Maria, this announcement has been very well received. I spoke to a person who has fled the conflict in eastern DRC and living in Kinshasa. He said this was like music to his ears because both sides have reaffirmed their commitment to resolve their dispute peacefully. They have committed to build a united, secure and prosperous DRC for the good of all the people. And this is something that they have been yearning for since this conflict began in late 2021. We've also heard from the Minister of Communication, Patrick Muyaya, saying that this agreement is a good thing because it respects the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the DRC. He said it's in line with the constitution of the DRC and also with the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2773, which calls on the withdrawal of the M23 rebels from all the areas that they have captured so far. So there is a lot of excitement in the DRC. People are fully aware that there are challenges that lie ahead in terms of implementing this peace agreement. There are issues of getting justice for the victims of this conflict, reconciling the communities that have been at loggerheads, and also issues of reparations. But they're saying that that can all be worked out after the guns fall silent. So there is a lot of hope that the two sides will continue discussing and finally end this war with the mediation of the United States and Qatar. Mahia?
Right, Chris, it might still be early days with the ink still drying on that declaration, but do we know at this time any of the key details from that declaration of principles?
Yes, so according to this draft document, the Declaration of Principles, one of the key things is that there's going to be a permanent ceasefire. Both sides have committed to stop all kinds of attacks, either on land, air, or sea. They're saying there will be no acts of sabotage to reignite any kind of fighting. And there's going to be a verification mechanism that will be set in place to ensure that this Declaration of Principles agreement is followed to the letter. There's also going to be a mechanism to build confidence between both sides. So basically they're going to create a conducive environment to ensure that there's no more hate speech, there's unity, and everything is done to protect civilians in eastern DRC. There's also going to be another issue about the restoration of state authority throughout the Congolese territory. This is a demand that the DRC government has been making for a very long time. We know that the M23 rebels have captured very many territories in North and South Kivu province, the cities of Goma, Bukavu, where they have set up administrative structures. They have been collecting taxes amounting to thousands of US dollars every month, and that is supposed to end. They're going to hold another round of talks to discuss the modalities of how they're going to withdraw from these areas. There's also an issue of the return of displaced people. There are thousands of people who have fled eastern DRC throughout the past 3 decades. since these conflicts have been breaking out in that area, and M23 rebels have been demanding the return of their relatives who are living in countries like Rwanda, Uganda, and other countries in the Great Lakes region. So they're supposed to be a safe, dignified, and voluntary return of these people that will be carried out along with the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR. And then there's also going to be an issue of working very closely with the United Nations Peacekeeping Mission, MONUSCO, to ensure the protection of civilians. And finally, like you mentioned, Mahia, they're going to come up with a comprehensive peace agreement 10 days after signing of this declaration of principles, where they're going to be discussing the nitty-gritty, the details. But this is going to be a critical moment because, like they say, the devil is in the details. So both sides will really come up, thrash out all the issues to come up with a comprehensive peace agreement. Mahia?
Right, Chris, there were, you've touched on the issues there. There were also some roadblocks on the road to peace there, such as the release of M23 rebels and the reopening of banks in rebel-held territories. Do we know any more about these issues, and have they been resolved?
Well, the issue of the release of prisoners was mentioned in this draft agreement. They are saying that there will be a mechanism that will be facilitated by the International Committee of the Red Cross to ensure that all the people who have been detained, either by the M23 rebels and the government, are going to be released. So this is something that they're going to work on. And also the issue of opening of banks, that is part of what they call the confidence building measures, to ensure that the Congolese people live lives of dignity and that they ease the suffering that they have had throughout this conflict. So that is something that will also be worked on, and we're waiting to hear what they will come up with in the next 10 days. We know that the United States government has been putting a lot of pressure on both sides to come up with this agreement because President Donald Trump said he plans to meet President Tshisekedi and Rwandan President Paul Kagame in the coming days. So that is according to some people I've spoken to, they're hoping before the end of this month they're supposed to meet, and they hope that the M23 rebels and the government will also have signed this agreement so that the war in Eastern DRC is brought to an end and people start living in peace. Mahia?
All right, Chris, thank you very much for those updates on Africa Live. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa speaking to us there from Kinshasa. Meanwhile, the UN continues to report violence in South and North Kivu provinces in eastern DRC. The fighting, which was logged up till this week, continues to claim civilian lives and trigger new displacements. Caroline B. reports.
Heavy clashes between M23 rebels and other armed groups have persisted since early July in several territories in the eastern DRC.
In North Kivu, our partners on the ground in the territories of Rutshuru and Lubero reported that fighting between M23 and other armed groups continued until this past Tuesday. As of earlier this week, 8 civilians have reportedly been killed, with more than 42,500 people fleeing the fighting. In South Kivu, heavy clashes between M23 and other armed groups have persisted since early July in several territories, including Walungu, Kabare, Fizi, Mwenga, and Kalehe. Local partners say the fighting has displaced at least 37,000 people from their homes.
The M23 has made rapid advances this year, seizing control of Goma and Bukavu, the capitals of North and South Kivu provinces, respectively. The Allied Democratic Forces, another armed militia affiliated to the Islamic State operating in the east around the DRC-Uganda border, continues to carry out attacks. The ongoing fighting continues to hinder humanitarian operations, limiting reach to vulnerable and displaced groups.
A humanitarian convoy coordinated by OCHA, which was primarily planned for today, along the road between the provincial capital Bukavu and the city of Uvira, has been postponed due to a lack of necessary security guarantees for that route. Meanwhile, in villages across the border between North Kivu and Ituri provinces, attacks by ADF armed groups have reportedly killed at least 65 civilians, with dozens more injured. Many others remain missing.
Humanitarian agencies say they are doing their best to maintain services to those affected, but restrictions and severe funding shortages pose significant challenges.
Halfway through the year, our $2.54 billion response plan for the DRC is less than 13% funded, with about $321 million received to date. As you can imagine, the lack of funding is putting the lives of millions of people in the DRC at risk. Many partners are forced to scale back their operations.
Now, with recent peace agreements between the governments of the DRC and Rwanda and the DRC government and the M23, those on the ground are hoping that the fighting will finally come to an end. Caroline B., CGTN.